In the end, we all become dirt and bones. Rosario was directed by Felipe Vargas in his feature film debut. This was written by Alan Treza, who's done films like We Summon the Darkness, and features Amarade Tabuya as Rosario, or Rose for short, who has a great job in the city, doing insurance, and day by day she tries to help out everyone she can, but then receives a call that her grandma died and a snowstorm is a-hittin', but Rosario must watch the corpsin' for Rosario. Yeah, that's basically it. Outside of a few outside shots early on, and an opening scene that actually takes place at the same apartment, now that I think about it, and like one or two scenes that take place outside the apartment about, 40 minutes, and this is a one location shoot in an apartment that honestly, the people running the Evil Dead Rise complex would say, boy, you guys don't renovate your shit at all. And we find out more about why Rosario, or Rose for short, has a strained relationship with her grandmother, and how all this factors into family matters. And I'm not referring to, did I do that? And there's some elements of, Catholicism, deep lore, Mexican, beliefs and stuff like that, or Hispanic beliefs of some variety. I'm not all that familiar with, so I'm going to try to be kind of light on that. And also, Jose Zuniga plays Oscar, the dad. He also played the dad in The Life List. He's also been in a lot of great stuff. He was also Mr. Molina in Twilight. And in all honesty, he's a terrific character actor. Amarade also did executive producer, stuff. And various other people were executive producers in this. I think it's had 9 to 10 executive producers, a couple line producers, and 3 producers. And clearly is a low-budget effort of a passion project that has some neat little story elements. I will say that. There are a few scenes I'm going to talk about, especially when I get in the spoiler section. The opening sequence, taking place at a communion, that's not bad. Sets the scene okay, and we get an idea that there's some dark shit going on in this family's past. Now, that's fine. And the one that plays young Rose, I'm not sure about the little girl's name, she does fine. She's not really given much to do, but you know what? Okay. Sets the scene fine. Flash forward, I do have to say, Amarade Tabuya, who, Jesus, I mean, with absolute respect, what a beauty. What an absolute beauty. And there's one little thing a little bit earlier on with the doorman that factors into something a little bit later on that I kind of liked. But you see that she's receiving calls from her grandmother. She finds out her grandmother died. She ends up showing up at this apartment. And because there's a snowstorm and because they're not in the best neighborhood, it's going to take the ambulance a while to get there. Also, David Malcian, I forget how to say that. I just want to call him David Dashcam. The guy that was lead in Late Night with the Devil, and also was the only good part of the Boogeyman, or Boogeyman. I actually forgot if there was a the there. The 2023 one that was absolute dog shit, but he was good. He's in there. There is a weird guy that's kind of like the tenant of this apartment that seemingly has like their apartment complex has like 2 tenants. And from there, we just have a horror movie that, again, has a few neat little things and a couple things that I think they could have explored on, especially one eventual reveal that was very fucking obvious from the beginning of the movie. But there is a neat little thing about a real world situation and stuff that people go through of, various ethnicities getting into this country. That's about as spoiler-free as I can be. That would actually have been something to expand on a little bit. I kind of would have liked maybe if they would have done that. And now focused on the honest-to-God fact that this movie just isn't very interesting at the end of the day. I tried with this. Oh my God, did I try, but I felt like I need to be locked in an institution. I wanted to like this movie more than I did. I ended up really being annoyed by this because I saw so much potential. They took some stuff from Evil Dead, clearly. They also, and that making it sound more interesting than it actually is. And I know I just credited, her presence and everything, her physical presence, and I'm sure she's been good in other projects, but as a lead in this, Amarade basically, one reviewer said on Rotten Tomatoes the best. I forgot to write the person's name down. It's like a teenager that's bored going through a haunted house. And that's kind of what this is. Like, there are so many questions that sort of get answered, and then there are things that you just don't care about. There are characters that are introduced, I think, just to increase the body count. And unfortunately, you have movies like The Vigil. You have other movies like, about like watching over a body. Like there was that short. And one of the VHS movies, I don't remember if it was like, I don't think it was the most recent one, but it was one of the ones on Shudder where the person is recording the wake and everything, recording the body that's in the casket. That was far more interesting. It was also shorter than this. And yes, we do get some flashbacks about how she interacted with her grandmother. And there are neat little story elements here, but this just didn't fully click. I'm sorry, this just didn't. And also the ending was incredibly goofy. It was like basically they had to Hollywoodize it. Because I have a feel, I don't know personally, but I have a feeling that Felipe probably wanted to try to do something maybe a little bit more low key. I'm just guessing. I certainly would have done something a little bit more low key. Because this just didn't end up gelling much at all. And when it tried to lean into the goofiness didn't really mesh well with the serious subject matter they were trying to dive into. And also, Jose wasn't given much to do, at least until the end. And then before that, I was actually totally checked out. It just doesn't end up really gelling at all. And again, I mean, I hate to say it, but like when you're in over your head as a lead and you're not given a lot of material, it's not going to fully click. It's not going to work. And there's like 40 minutes of material here. And the film's twice as long as that, and that's not a good idea. Now, it is in theaters if you want to check it out, or it'll be on streaming soon. But support projects like this, give it a shot. Let me know what you think. 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So, basically, in the beginning, we see a communion in Brooklyn, 1999. Where we're going to go? Brooklyn 1999. I'm going to screw up that song, 1999. The grandmother is doing some stuff or whatever. The Rosario has her communion. And we see that, the granddaughter gets near some shit that she shouldn't. The mother's also very sick, obviously. And the dad does something like, love you back, that kind of stuff. And that's a nice little thing that they actually tie in a little bit later on. And some of it's in Spanish, which I am terrible at. I took 1 year of Spanish and knew more going into the class than I did coming out of it. Yeah, somehow passed with a B. But that being said, the grandmother gets a little bit upset when Rosario gets too close to her stuff. She says, my beliefs are not yours. And there's some text, that opens about Paulo being all about sacrifice. And Paulo has to do with, taking elements of African, voodoo that you do so well. And old school Catholicism, especially in Hispanic cultures. And mixing that and human centipede it together and all that. So basically, there was this scene. Once we smash cut to current day, we see Emirati, and she is talking to her doorman. Her doorman wants to invest in stuff like that, but they don't have enough capital or whatever the term is. And I'm going to try, but I can't right now. She keeps receiving calls from her grandmother. Eventually gets a call that her grandmother is dead. So she's going to go to that apartment in a snowstorm. Luckily, she's able to get there seemingly within minutes. Apparently, the East Coast traffic is not nearly as bad in movies as it is in real life, evidently. I haven't been on the East Coast since 2010, and Boston was fun. It wasn't fun to drive in, but I digress. Her dad's going to be there. He's driving from Atlantic City. It's a bad snowstorm, and she's spending time with the corpse. The apartment manager lets her in. And the body's there, and she starts to notice that something's a little bit off. Like, the apartment's really dark. She has her phone. She wastes her phone battery and runs it all the way down, Googling stuff and figuring this stuff out. And then a neighbor named Joe, hello Joe, played by David Dash, as I'm going to call him. He had an air fryer that he let the grandmother borrow, and he wanted it back. Now that, I think, was supposed to be played for last, but it really wasn't. I mean, getting an appliance or something back from somebody that you let borrow once they pass away, that's relatable. I can identify with that. So, he's a great actor, but I just don't feel his character, outside of like one little thing, was necessarily needed. And really, it's just Rose or Rosario going through all this stuff and going through this, these weird totems that she finds. After she sees a locked, area with a chain and a padlock and everything, and she notices her grandmother's corpse has like a key and, barb, like Jesus's crown, like on her leg and everything, and she rips that off. That's always a good thing to do when you're doing that. Just rip apart a corpse and everything. It's fine. She does that. She ends up unlocking that, and it turns out there's this weird ritualistic stuff, a cauldron with spiky stuff on it. Bet that won't factor into the finish of this movie. And she ends up inadvertently causing, a demon to come forth. I mean, this demon was kind of held, but the demon's it's like a ganga or something. I forget if that's actually how you pronounce it, but it's some kind of demon. And this demon, it turns out, actually is something that will fulfill the wish of the particular person. But if a sacrifice is not made, they will pursue that person until the debt is collected. And that's basically it. So it's like that's it. The grandmother made that sacrifice. Well, it turns out actually kind of, but also not really. There is a point where a centipede comes out of the grandmother's corpse, the nose. It's a literal human centipede. You're welcome. And she ends up burning her hand. It ends up kind of getting into her arm, but she ends up cutting it out somehow. That's okay. It's totally fine. Or maybe she doesn't cut it out because she gets it out of her nose, but did it leave something behind? Yes, it did. It absolutely left something behind. She ends up talking to Joe a few times. She ends up then trying to leave because she's like, fuck this. I found all this weird shit going on and all that. She decides to leave. She gets into a tunnel, and this tunnel seemingly abandoned. I thought it was a tunnel from Possession. I'm like, she doesn't have a bag of groceries to swing around. By the way, watch Possession if you have now seen Possession. Wild, crazy. No wonder the 2 stars, including Sam Neill from Jurassic Park, had to get therapy. Also, I just want to point out that if you see this actress, and I'm just going to point the name right there, you get Isabella. The name actually, the last name totally escapes me right now because the shirt is here, and I'm not going to look down. She's great. She's absolutely great. She was also in the Werner Herzog Nosferatu movie. So let's get back to this, even though the stuff I was talking about for side topics is far more interesting. Rosario has to decipher this whole thing, has to figure out a way to use this voodoo, and her Spanish isn't all that good, use the spell book to basically trap this demon, whatever it is, in her grandmother's corpse. Otherwise, it will get in her. Spoiler, it's already in her, by the way. But the tunnel parts that I was mentioning, we have some guy with dogs that basically says, don't move, get her. Remember that. So she's trying to figure out all this stuff. I'm skipping through a lot of things because a lot of this really isn't all that good. She manages to get back in the apartment complex. Joe offers a bunch of exposition about how, even though the dad had said grandmother's really proud of her, she hadn't been able to visit her grandmother. She shunned her mother, shunned her grandmother, especially when her mother was sick, and her grandmother and everything like that was just too busy to go visit her. You always want to check up on your loved ones. They were there for you during your formative years. You always want to make sure you check up on them as best you can. Life gets busy, but you're never too busy to talk to your parents, those that raised you. So she ends up basically getting back in the apartment, and she has to find a way to basically do this whole damn thing. The dad is on his way. The dad has explained that the grandmother is proud. Joe basically just throws a preponderance of exposition at her, saying she was proud of you. She talked about that. She was doing praying. And it turns out that the grandmother actually was doing a prayer protection thing. Not a curse, but protection to help her granddaughter. So why is this demon pursuing everybody, or pursuing her? It would be funny if it was pursuing everybody. It would be far more interesting. But it's like Kobayende, I believe is the name of it. And she is trying to trap this demon. Now, she does end up trapping the demon in the grandmother's corpse through crazy stuff and everything and all this that's going on. And not a lot of it's terribly interesting. I'm making it sound more interesting than it plays out, unfortunately. And obviously, there was one part just before that where she's talking to her grandmother, or her mother rather, and she's apologizing to her mother. Her mother said, you were never selfish, you were never this kind of stuff, all this stuff that you went through, because it turns out the tunnel scene that I mentioned about the dogs, we go and see how Rosario, or Rose, and her mother and father came into this country, across the border, in a truck. And the dogs were from immigration, La Migra. And that was a scene I think that really they could have expanded on. I mean, I'm not saying they need to show that entirely in that deal, but they could have broken it up. They could have given us indications and little scenes, here and there throughout the movie, and then finally shown us the whole thing. Oh, that's why. I mean, yeah, it's implied the grandmother was there without papers, and the mother did her best and everything, but she got sick, and that's why she ended up passing away shortly after the communion, and that's why that haunts Rosario. And she had this conversation with her mother. It actually wasn't her mother, it was a demon. And the demon's trying to get her, but she traps the demon in the grandmother's corpse and all this. And then the dad shows up. And the dad's doing some cleanup and stuff like that. They get the body out. Everything's cool. The ambulance people get there. But there was one funny scene a little bit earlier when the apartment manager got the paramedics to try and get the body. But she drugged the body into this area to do a blood ritual to trap the demon in there. That was before that, so he's like, where the hell's the goddamn... Where the hell are they? And I thought maybe at first just the way they were changing the lighting with some of the rooms and everything, that we were going to go with an alternate dimension or an alternate reality where actually she was trapped there forever. And it seemed like things would work out, but they didn't. They didn't really seem to go that way. But she ends up trapping that demon. She ends up talking to her dad. And then her dad goes into the weird room and everything and is looking at all this, and it turns out he's actually the one that did it at the communion. He studied up on the stuff, and he wanted to help out the grandmother because he didn't want the grandmother to have that sin. He wanted to make sure that his daughter had the life that he knew he wanted to give her, but he couldn't. Now, okay, that's great. The problem is the plot was lost by this point. And then his blood ends up hitting this cauldron. And unfortunately, because of that, he now has the demon possess him for movie reasons. And he gets all this stuff. And then Joe shows up. He's hitting him with either the air fryer or something. But then he gets his neck snapped. And then suddenly, Rose shows up with a goddamn knife and stabs her dad. And he falls on the goddamn little spiky cauldron thing and dies. And they do the thing that I love you, love you back. Whatever it was. And that's it. And then we go 6 months later, and she's talking to the guy, Miguel, the doorman. That was his name, Miguel. Now, he wasn't Miguel, the doorman. That would have been very hard to put on his license. And everything's working out with the insurance. And now she's got all this, stuff that her grandmother had, these candles and all these pictures and stuff like that. And then suddenly there was Joe was doing coughing, and the coughing, I think, like he was legit sick or infected. And the mother was sick. Well, suddenly she starts coughing, and then the demon hand comes out, and that's it. And then it smashes to end credits. And really? That's how we're ending that? Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Rosario wasn't very good. I tried. I really tried. I wanted this to be good. I wanted this to at least be decent. Check it out in theaters. You may feel differently, but this did not click for me. It gets an F. I'm sorry. It gets an F. Agree, disagree with what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.